Okay, we're here in Cheap Joe's with Birgit
O'Connor.
Birgit
Birgit
O'Connor.
O'Connor, yeah.
Probably no relation to Flannery O'Connor.
No.
But artist extraordinaire
Okay.
in painting flowers and nature. And you like rocks.
Rocks, streams, anything in nature.
So every 2 years you show up and you've got a full class. You've kept them really busy.
Yes.
They looked pretty intent.
Oh yeah.
Maybe a little bit lost at the beginning.
Oh, definitely
lost at the beginning.
Yes.
So.
I threw them in. It's like throwing them into deep water without a life raft.
Yeah.
But they learned a lot very quickly.
So I was talking to one of your students today, and she said that, and this might be a place to start, that you have taken her fear of painting big away.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So that leads into the question, as an instructor, what is your goal for your students to leave with, to take home with them?
That they can do it, and that they aren't afraid, and that they, well, like this particular workshop, we call it Fearless Flowers, and I always thought it was about the composition, but it's not.
Okay.
They're so afraid of making a mistake or water, or that they're, you know, they just hold their breath. So it's really about them exploring and finding confidence and coming out with an amazing painting, which they never expected.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, your paintings are very, how would you describe them? I mean, where you flow from one gradation of color to another, and there's a real sense of, how would you describe
what
that?
the students were saying yesterday, it was something, it's more lyrical in many ways. It may not seem like that. They're bold. A lot of people would associate it more towards Georgia O'Keeffe.
Okay.
And that's just because it's a big abstracted flower. But really it's not about the flower as much as it is the flower is the form and the vehicle for using the amount of water, movement, shadow, and depth.
Well, I can see the Georgia O'Keeffe.
Right,
because when you see one of her big paintings at the Metropolitan Museum, her going from light to dark, that's what I think I was talking about. You have a very light hand going from a light color to a darker color. There's not a whole lot of choppiness. It's just you've learned how to smooth that out, which is in your rock paintings. It's just amazing the way Andy Goldsworthy would be jealous. Do you know?
Oh, no, I don't know who that is, but I'm very flattered with that.
He's rocks and streams. He makes rock sculptures and all kinds.
Wow.
You would really like Andy. Andy Goldsworthy.
Does he do the paintings or does he
doesn't do painting. He just does the rock sculptures.
Okay, then I think I've seen that.
Yeah, so he was. Anyway, it's. So you describe your paintings as more lyrical? Is that?
Well, because there's a movement and a flow to it. It's like you said, not choppy.
Right.
We want, and that's something I really work with the students on, getting the flow to it, how to soften an edge.
Okay.
And we did a lot of practice on brush strokes and the amount of pressure you apply, and that it's not just use any old brush and what brush is going to give you what you want. So I don't want, even though we're using all the same composition, they have the option to do their own, but they never do. But that we're using the same composition, they're all incredibly different, and I want to know what the student wants out of their goal. I want to know, do they want it to be really loose or smooth? And then we work with their goals.
Okay. So you mentioned Georgia O'Keeffe already. Are there other artists who have inspired you in your...
Well, it wasn't even that Georgia O'Keeffe actually inspired me. It was, I always thought watercolor had to be traditional blocky watercolor, the old kind. And where I lived, there was a woman named Nell Melcher, and I actually saw that she handled watercolor differently.
Right.
But she actually had the black line around everything, and then would fill in things with some ink and flowers. And it was just beautiful. She did a lot of wine bottles and flowers, and that was inspiring to me. And I couldn't understand watercolor. Could never get it. It runs in my family. Art. I'm an only child. Art runs in my family. So my father was a master lithographer. He played, he did the color separations. He tried to talk to me about that, and I could never understand that because it was so linear. My aunt was a graphic designer and tried to be a watercolorist, but at that time, and she was very good at watercolor, but women were not acknowledged.
Right, right.
And I had an uncle in Germany that was a gold medal watercolorist, but I only met him once. So it was, and my mom really inspired me more than anything.
Okay. You do about 12 workshops a year. That's
it depends.
According to your website.
Yeah, it can be up to 18, 12. I'm actually trying to reduce them so I can spend more time building some other online courses, and definitely coming back here if you'll have me.
Okay. Well, you fill your classes, and we've already talked to you about the Palette magazine. So
Yes.
We can do that, and I think that that's part of what we do here is I get the opportunity to talk to 24, 25 instructors a year. Talk to the students, find out what they like, find out where they're going, and everybody's different. I mean, you talked about the lyricalness and the smoothness of your painting, and as opposed to a Charles Reeve, where you had blotches of, or a Frank Webb, where it's just this bold, one big color kind of thing. And you're just really. I guess it would be, flowers are kind of sensual anyway, I guess. And rocks, smooth rocks that have been, waters washed over them for several years. And that's, I think, I was impressed by your nature paintings on your website. So. And you didn't do any of that this week. Right?
No, this week we decided to name it Fearless Flowers. And like I said, I thought it was about composition, and it wasn't. Right. But what was interesting, like when we started this week, and when I said I really did plunge in the students, because and people, if they looked at the composition that we did, wouldn't understand what we're doing, because what most artists do is they'll maybe paint up to the shadow and then add the shadow on there, or paint the shadows first. We break things down from a complicated thing into simple shapes, and then reduce it into shapes and then detail, and like a flower without sun, and so it's a completely different approach.
One of the questions I always ask is, if I had no idea who you were, and I'm watching this little video clip, why would I want to take a Birgit O'Connor workshop? What would you tell me?
Wow. You'll know how to do watercolor. If you want to know how to do watercolor, I can teach you how to do it. It doesn't matter what you want to do, I can teach you.
Okay.
And it's interesting, like when you were talking about like Charles Reed, and like when I do some landscape paintings, one of my I'll do smooth landscape paintings, and that will be with Arches paper. The materials make all the difference in the world.
Right.
And if I want more of that, I don't know if I have that on my website, but I do have a YouTube clip on it on how to do a little waterfall. And then what I like is a Kilimanjaro paper or something a little softer, and then using a small little a number 20 wash mottler, which is like a 1-inch flat. Okay. And so different, and I like having flexibility. So I'm not just one thing, that's not only what I do. And it's fun to, it's just so fun to engage with the students and see their joy and their fearlessness that comes out. So,
well, that's good.
So I think about when I was first starting out, and there weren't workshops at that time, and all we had were maybe a couple online, like Bob Ross and Tom Lynch. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and I had no access to anything. So I think about them, and I think about how can I help people that like maybe can't go out for medical reasons, or they're stuck at home, or don't have the education to go out because I'm self-taught. I don't have a college education on this. Or I think people that are, or maybe even homeschooled kids, or people just that are limited. That's what I want to reach out to them. And workshops, what's fabulous about the workshops is that we really get to spend time together and go out to dinner and get to know each other. So it's a great marriage of both.
I'm a big fan of workshops, of course, and that people that take workshops have made a commitment for a week.
It's fabulous.
A monetary commitment, but you can't get on a DVD what you get out of a workshop.
You can't.
Because that interaction, it does something to you. It's I've taken journalism kind of workshops, and you always come away kind of, wow, I had no idea that this was possible. And you don't normally come away from a DVD like that, so that's a good thing.
Well, you know what's interesting about what you just said, what I just discussed for the students was composition. And the way I look at composition is a little differently than some people. You know, I don't think about the general rules. It depends on what do I want to achieve out of that. Do I want to work with a color? Do I want to work with, you know, this or that? But basically what I'm trying to get at is when we looked at a rose with a big surrounded area, I said, okay, so now you're kind of set back, you know? And that would be similar to looking at a DVD. You're kind of like detached from it in a sense. And then if you take that and you do a little cropping, you become much more intimate with it. And that would be the same thing of having an actual workshop. You're more intimate, and you get to know. It's wonderful. That connection is fabulous, and we all learn so much from each other. And it's interesting if I get somebody that says, you know, rarely do I have somebody that says, oh, I'm so advanced, you know. And it's like, when you're working with new materials and a new style, we all are at the same place.
That's good. That's good. Last but not least, do you have any favorite Cheap Joe stories or any?
Oh gosh. Well, you know, Joe is the most fabulous man in the world. And Joe, he's he is so filled with heart, and with Joe, he has a way of, every time, you know, he can talk to me, and he is so wonderful with stories, and I'll go, really, Joe? Really? And he just is like, he just reels me right in. And Edwina is wonderful. The whole staff here is wonderful. You've got a great facility here. And
one of the best.
It is. It's absolutely wonderful being here. And I'm thinking about any particular story. They're all fabulous. It's just a fabulous experience.
That's a good thing. It's we know we've got a good facility. We know we have good instructors, and part of this is to let people know that, you know, and generally you come every 2 years.
Yeah, every other year.
Every other year, and that's the way that we can kind of. We've got a stable of maybe 50 artists, and some do every year. Or a Chinky Chi could do 2 in a 1 year period and fill both. And he's at that level of wherever you get Chinky Chi. I mean, so Birgit, it's been a pleasure talking to you and interacting with your class, and we look forward to your continued success, and we'll see you in 2 years, I guess.
That sounds good to me. Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate it. It's just wonderful, and it's so hard to leave the students after a week. It's so difficult to leave here. It's just wonderful.
From here you go where?
I'm going home, and then I have another workshop next month.
Home is?
A little bit north of San Francisco on the Pacific Ocean. Wow. So it's pretty nice. It's hard to get me out of there because it's pretty nice.
What do they call that highway that goes up there?
Highway 1.
Highway 1, Pacific Coast, PCH?
I guess they call that, yeah.
Pacific Coast Highway, right.
Yeah, so I live Stinson Beach, Bolinas area, next to the Point Reyes National Seashore, and
is there some wineries there?
Not where I live. We we have a lot of whales and,
Okay.
you know, salmon. We go out salmon fishing.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's really wonderful.
Nothing like wild caught salmon.
Oh no, I know.
On the grill. Right?
Yeah, it is fabulous. It's
is.
wonderful. Yeah, and Muir Woods, that's a good point of reference.
Okay.
A lot of people know where that is. So I remember being in Boston, and I was telling the taxi cab driver because he didn't know where I lived, and I told him, I said, well, gosh, have you ever seen the Planet of the Apes, you know, the new movie? I mean, it's just
Right.
like a terrible point of reference. And I said, you know, when they're all in the redwoods,
Right.
that's about the same area where I live. So, I know, but it's gorgeous there. You've got the redwoods, the ocean. It's fabulous.